Good morning and welcome to SimWorld Today, Hump Day Edition, Wednesday, February 19th. I am Marsh, joined as always by Rick Blaze, apparently the Urban Cowboy this morning. Good morning, Rick. How are you?
Don't forget Urban Legend as well. I'm ready to get into this. Let's get into it. I'm finna find out a lot about you in this first segment right now, Marsh. I'm about the
Sure. You,
world,
you know
Craig.
Urban
The
Legends are
whole world,
fake, right?
Craig, is about to find out a lot about you in this first segment. Let's get to it.
You do know that Urban Legend means fake, right? So you're fake. Are we confirming this?
Your
I'm just saying that's
definitions
what
of
that's what an
terms,
urban legend is.
you do know terms can have more than one definition, right? We gotta get into that this
That's
morning.
not how urban legend works, though.
Not your version of urban legend.
Oh, so you're making up your own words. All right, got it. Let's get to the first topic, which is, in fact, the number 2 Texas Longhorns going down. And Rick, I have to ask, how far do they need to drop? I mean, what do we got to be number 10 in the country, right? Judging by your standards. Where is Texas after losing last night to
Well,
Texas Tech at home?
apparently there's a new standard. They don't drop at all. Texas don't move. They stay number 2.
Well, let's
It's
follow
literally
your
the same
standard.
situation. It's literally the same situation Duke went into. They were the number one. Duke was number one team. Lost to a bad team. Didn't budge. Ooh. Number 2. Texas number 2 team. Lost to a bad team. They shouldn't budge. We're about to find out if you are the leader of the glazing community of Duke with your response, because you made all of these top 10 reasons why Duke should move, and they got it right. Cool. Well, keep that same energy. Texas had a bad game. I still think they're the second best team in all of SimWorld U basketball. So they should move. Let's keep it going. I'm with it. I love it.
I would expect them to
Let's keep it going.
fall. I would expect them to fall behind Villanova. And the reason being is that Duke and this is the irony of this is that you somehow think I'm a glazer for the Blue Devils when I simply could not care less about who Duke is, and they're a talented basketball team, but I'm certainly no fan of the Blue Devils. Have no Duke memorabilia in this household. But Duke has proven time and time again that they were the best team in the country. And one game wouldn't change that. Texas has had slip-ups. This is their 4th loss of the season. Okay, they've had more slip-ups than Duke has had in the entirety of the year. I think you were splitting hairs, not you personally, but in general, you're splitting hairs between Texas and Villanova at 2 and at 3. And I think this loss will put Villanova above them. I would expect that to move in the SP top 25. I wouldn't expect that to move Alabama because, again, if your track record and this is your being the SPs, if your track record says Texas at 17-3 was better than Alabama at 18-2, Texas at 17-4 probably doesn't look a lot different than Alabama at 18-2. It does look a lot different when you look at them compared to Villanova, who continues to win. They have 16 straight wins. I think that your infatuation with Duke not leaving the number 1 spot is ill-placed, because one game, as I have said many times, should not drastically change your opinion if you firmly believe something. But I do not believe that Texas was the bona fide, unparalleled number 2 team in the country in the same way that Duke was the number 1 team in the country for the past month and a half, in which they've been the top 25. They've been really number 1 outside of all but 2 to 3 weeks all season long, and in those 2 to 3 weeks when they were not number 1, the team that usurped them quickly lost and fell out of that spot. So I understand where you want to make the comparison between Duke and Texas and one of them setting the precedent for the other, but the fact is, unfortunately for you, Rick, it's not the same team. It's a team that's one been otherwise unflawed, and another that has had up and down campaigns, minor up and down, but nonetheless more fluctuation in their season in Texas. I would expect them to drop, but here's the other thing: it doesn't really matter. So if you want to, I'll cede the floor. I'll let you yell. I'll let you hoop and holler. But here's the thing: doesn't really matter, does it? Because what's going to end up happening is Texas is certainly going to be a number 1 seed, although there's a very real case now that Alabama should be a number 1 seed in Hoopsteria, and we'll see if that ends up happening. But I would expect Texas, Villanova, and Duke, and Alabama's number 4 anyway, so they'll be a number 1 seed. So where they end up in the SP top 25 probably doesn't matter because they're still a top 4 team.
It matters because what we're saying is based on what you're saying. Now we're saying that the premise on whether teams should
You
stay
didn't listen.
when they
You didn't
lose
listen.
or
You
drop
didn't listen
down
to
is
me.
based on how somebody feels. So
You didn't
there's
listen to me.
I
I'm glad that you
let you
do. I'm glad that you have selective hearing, Rick, because that's not at all
I
what I said. What I
I
just said
listened
was
to you.
Duke's
You
track
said,
record
"Hey,
is much
unfortunately,
stronger
you
over the
said I'm
course of it.
paraphrasing. You said that Texas had a more up and down season than Duke. Texas,
Correct. I did say that.
that's opinionated, right? You also said that everything you said was opinionated. Everything said was
And
opinionated, but
what? Yours not. Yours isn't. Oh, that's right. I
the
forgot.
fact,
Urban
but
Legends word of law over
the
here in Texas.
fact
I forgot that's how you
is,
guys
I'm
operated.
talking facts. The fact is, Duke lost a game. And the
Okay,
fact
so you
is, the
didn't listen though.
SP25 decided there was no penalty for them losing the game at the number one seed. Those are facts. So I'm saying if that's the fact, if that's the protocol, let's keep it going. I think Texas is still the second best team in all of college basketball.
Sure.
They lost a game similar to Duke, and
Sure.
I don't feel they should budge if that's what the protocol is. But
Look, I wish I
apparently, I'm
could.
sure the goalpost is going to get moved again because,
Mhm.
and the thing is, people say, "Oh, I don't think I'm doing that." But the fact is, Duke has done something. It's something that they've had parameters set for Duke that hasn't been set for any other team in all of college basketball, and that is I can lose a game and I do not move at all. Those are facts. You can spin it,
I
you can
wish.
twist it, you
Rick,
can
I gotta
congratulate however
say,
you want to. Those are facts, though.
yeah. Yeah,
Facts over feelings.
I really wish I could turn off my hearing aids like you do, because that's not what I said. What
Facts
I
over
said was
feelings.
Duke has put together a track record over the entirety of the season that Texas has not. Okay, Texas is put together a great track record, but has not put together the same one that Duke was, which before their loss to FSU was one loss. This is Texas's fourth loss of the season. I know those are different numbers, and I know they both have straight lines, but they are different numbers, Rick, and I know that can be confusing for you,
But
but they
Duke isn't the
are,
only
in
team with
fact,
only two.
different
Duke isn't
ones.
the only team with only two losses. So that doesn't mean
You're
anything either. What
correct,
you're saying. So
but it
that
does
doesn't
because,
carry
again,
any water.
Rick, you have
You're
poor
picking and
listening skills.
choosing. You're picking and
No,
choosing
no, Rick,
what
I'm
you
really
want to
not
make.
because
You are.
you're not. You're
I'm
first
speaking
off, can I
facts.
finish a
You
damn
speaking hyperbole.
sentence?
I'm
Can I
speaking facts.
finish a sentence, Rick? Or are we just gonna keep interrupting? Thank you. What I said was, and you didn't listen to this part, is that Duke has been the better team over the course of the season in a way that Texas has not been the number two. And I know you have an infatuation for the Longhorns. So I know the real glazer on this show right now is in fact you, because I don't give a damn about Duke. But we all know your infatuation with the Texas Longhorns. I didn't say that at all. What I said was Duke's track record has been stronger over the course of the season than Texas's is. And you're really going to get bent out of shape at the end of the day of Texas moving from number 2 to probably number 3. And if not, maybe, but I doubt to see it, number 4, which is, of course, another team that you have love for, which is Alabama. We've gone too long on this one. Let's move on to tonight's game, which is Arkansas and Kentucky. A chance to sit atop the SEC. Arkansas is 3-0 in conference play. Kentucky trying to fight their way back up to 2-2. What are you expecting to see tonight in this Kentucky and Arkansas matchup?
Kentucky got to come out guns a blazing. Kentucky needs this win. Kentucky is a much better team than what they've been playing like lately, and they're not looking. They're behind in the SEC. They got to get some wins, and they got to get them in the conference play. And they got to get one badly. I expect Kentucky to play desperation basketball to set the tone. But this Arkansas team is not to be toyed with. They've earned their spot, and it's going to be a really great game. I think it's going to come down to the big fella Jamison Johnson. If he can dominate like he usually does, Kentucky has a chance to get a win. I think they got a very serious chance to get back on track tonight.
I think this is a make or break game for Kentucky. If Kentucky loses this game on the road, they fall to 1-3 in conference play. That puts them, as of this, and I think they play Arkansas again in a little home and home, but that puts them pretty much 4 games back because of the tiebreaker to Arkansas for the number 1 spot. And of course, they're chasing down at this point South Carolina, who's 4-0 and number 2. But it also would put them 3 games back because of the head-to-head advantage currently for Alabama, who sits right now at 3-1 and the second best team, or the third best team, the one right behind South Carolina in the SEC. If Kentucky doesn't win this game, their pathway to getting to an SEC championship game is challenging because now you have to go past Texas A&M, Auburn, Ole Miss, Florida. Those teams aren't great, so to speak, but you still have to jump every single one of them. Not to mention, you've still got Mississippi State, who's trying to do pretty much the same thing that Kentucky is, which is rally from a really poor start to the season, conference play season, and get back in. They're 1-2 as well. So Arkansas, there's room for them to kind of fall here, but if Kentucky loses this game, it's a wrap for them, in my opinion, in making it to the SEC championship game. At least, I shouldn't say it's a wrap because anything could happen, but it'll make it exceptionally challenging for them mathematically that I just would not trust picking them to make it all the way to the SEC championship game without a very, very impressive run in conference play. So we're going to see what do Jamison Johnson and Glory Tate bring to the floor in this backs against the wall game that you very rarely see in conference play, but now we're seeing it because of this new formed conference championship game approach in college basketball.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to really see which side the bread is buttered. Again, this Arkansas team is a very, very good team, so let's not take nothing from them. But if you're Kentucky, I don't disagree with you. If you are Kentucky, this is make or break right here for your conference championship to even have a chance to fight and crawl back. But this is where the time that the big players step up and make big plays. So I expect Kentucky to be ready, and I expect it to be a hell of a game.
All right, let's head to the Big East, which of all the conferences certainly has a lot of interest to it, right? You got 3 top 20 teams. You got St. John's, who's having a great season. Villanova, who's made their case for potentially being the number 1 team in the country. But the question is this wrapped up? Villanova 4-0 in conference play. Every other team in the conference has at least 2 losses. Is Villanova guaranteeing their way into the conference championship game at this point, Rick?
Yeah, they're head and shoulders above the rest. I mean, there's tiers to this, there's levels to this. Villanova in this conference is the 9, the girl at the bar who's a 9 or a 10, and all her friends are 5s and 6s. This is what we're looking at here. She's the belle of the ball. Everyone else is just purse holders. And they're just the girls that go and get to pick up the drinks and things like that. But the real star here is Villanova. Butler had a shot. They're 0-2. I mean, they're 2-2. St. John's is 2. No other team, they're all better. They're none better than 2-2. Villanova is 4-0. Villanova had to absolutely implode in order for them to not run away with the Big East Conference and this championship. They are one of the better teams, not only in the Big East, but in all of SimWorld U. This is a wrap for this division. Butler, St. John's, Georgetown, good night. Thanks for playing.
I don't see the pathway back into this. And again, it doesn't matter now because you're really fighting for the number 2 spot, and we've got 6-7 teams that are all tied at 2-2 right now. But I don't see a pathway back to catching up if Villanova wins. I would say 1, right? Take a look at their schedule as I'm saying this, but I think Villanova, not only have they played better than everybody else, but the place that they're sitting on and having just beaten up on Butler, who in theory would be your second contender there. So you've got essentially a 3-game lead on Butler. You're going to get Georgetown and you're going to get St. John's in the next couple of games, and UConn. That's their upcoming schedule is Georgetown, Creighton, UConn, St. John's. So 3 of their next 4 are probably the teams, and even Creighton is 2-2 and should have been having a better season. I would say by the end of this month, we're probably going to have at least 1 team booked in the Big East, because not only do you look at the records, but let's also just look at the consistency of play. Right? Villanova, for 20 games, has been the 3rd, 4th most consistent team in all of college basketball, maybe among the top 5, let's call it, right? If you're going down to Virginia Tech at number 5. They have been completely the better basketball team. Forget about records, just in terms of we know what they're going to show up with, right? St. John's has not done that. They've had their fair share of disappointing losses despite being number 13 in the country. Butler has certainly not had that, considering they were at one point a top 12 team, but they're now down to number 19. So this has been a team, Villanova, that's been so much more consistent than every other team in the Big East that it's difficult. I don't know how you sit here and say, no, I see a pathway back when 2/3 of the season has already been accounted for, and no other team in the Big East has done what Villanova's done. 16 straight wins, 3 losses on the season entirely. I mean, they started 1-4, and since then they've been the best team in college basketball if you just want to look at wins and losses with 16 straight. Help me find an argument, because I don't know what it is, and I know you're not making one, but for where do you sit here and say, no, I think Butler, St. John's, and Georgetown are three teams that are going to somehow lose fewer games over the next, I think, 11 than Villanova has lost in the entirety of the season.
I can't make that case. They're good teams, but they're not great teams. And early on in the season, Butler seemed like they were going to do some things, and maybe they had enough to try to compete for this conference play or this conference championship. But as the season is going on, Villanova is a team that's gotten better over the season, while the rest of the team kind of stayed the same, which is not bad. But you see their records; they 2-2 in conference play. When Villanova's on their 16-game winning streak, they've just took this thing into overdrive. Justin Bell and the guys have really Justin Bell and the guys. That sounds good. They have really taken over the conference, and not only that, but taken over the SWU. And so, Villanova's a player. We're not even talking about as a player in the conference play. Villanova's a player in all of Hoopsteria that is to come. The other guys, y'all just pack it up. Thanks for playing.
The next four teams, Butler, St. John's, Georgetown, UConn, have reached the peaks that Villanova has. And I'm just talking about the 1 to 5 game avenues of saying, okay, that's a top 5 team in college basketball. They've reached that peak. None of them have sustained it at the extent that Villanova has, and so expecting that peak to last long enough and for Villanova's Valley to return seems highly unlikely in the Big East. All right, that's our show. Reminder, of course, the game of the week tonight at 8 p.m. That is on ESPN. Kentucky visits Arkansas in what can certainly be classified as a must-win game for the Kentucky Wildcats if they hope to make the SEC championship game. But our night starts with different SEC hoops. That's South Carolina and Texas A&M at 6:30 as the appetizer for tonight's game of the week. We'll be back tomorrow morning. We'll recap that. What is an SEC? We're going to get some answers tonight on the SEC, right? You've got South Carolina, who's got a chance to move to 5-0. If they do that and Arkansas moves themselves to 4-0, we might just be staring down the future conference championship matchup unless Alabama has anything to say about it. We'll return on Thursday. Also, SWBA returns on Thursday. We'll look forward to the post-All-Star break and what is to come in the handful of games left remaining before the postseason starts at about 25-30 games in the association. All right, Rick, as always, great to have you on. Appreciate you all tuning in. We're back tomorrow morning here on SimWorld TV, the only place you can see the game, be the game.
Players only live once.